Welcome to the Freedom CEO podcast. It's about becoming the chief decision maker over your life in order to step into a life of freedom. From business, health, wealth, charity, and giving back to just doing life on your own terms. I am your host, Shay Invidiata. I am an award-winning activist, change maker, and a multi-facet impact entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in business, philanthropy, and health and wellness. In this space, I'm going to be bringing you insights, not just from me, but from incredible thought leaders around the globe to help you start making decisions towards living a life of freedom so you can live a life you love. Are you ready, guys? Because we are going all in. In August of 2021, he lost his job because he refused to be forced to take the shot. George Douklias was stressed and unemployed with all the time in the world, and he wanted to find an employer that he could trust. And then he became that employer. Who knew that starting a Telegram group would be the gateway opportunity to becoming the CEO of his own company, Jabless Jobs? Our conversation is going to inspire you. And who knows, this might help you find your next job. Talk about holding the line. George, I am so excited to have you here today on the Freedom CEO podcast. We're going to have such a dynamic conversation about really what you have created. And to be on the Freedom CEO podcast, I mean, like, you are both of these things, freedom fighter. And through this whole experience that we're going to talk about, you have become a CEO. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Shay. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, it's, the last 2-3 years really for us all have been such a wild roller coaster. And you have a pretty remarkable story, similar to many people that were put in a very tough position where their own values and beliefs could have been compromised, their own health could have been compromised, and came to a crossroad of making a really hard decision as to complying even if they didn't want to, or in your case, saying F no, and maybe not knowing what was going to be on the horizon, but just knowing that you could not say yes to what was being asked of you. So I would love to just dive in there, like, in 2021, was it that, so through the mandates, and we knew this was coming down the pipeline, right?
We did. Well,
maybe some people didn't, but I mean, it was just, for me, I could see that this was going to happen, right? So mandates come down, you get told you need to get a jab, and if not, there's a door. And what were you thinking when you decided to walk out that door?
Well, I mean, I was quite shocked. There's a backstory to that as well. Like, my employer at the time was a childhood friend of mine.
Wow.
I grew up with him in Winnipeg. We met in kindergarten on the playground. We have playground stories together. We've known each other. We at that point, we knew each other for 40 years.
Wow.
And I was in training still, working for him as management. And it's an exterior building cleaning service. I was washing windows and pressure washing concrete. We weren't mandated at all. The province of British Columbia was not mandating him. And before he hired me, we had the talk. We just agreed to disagree. And a week or two later, we were talking about me coming to work for him and getting trained as management. So the problem was that, as soon as I started my training, he wanted to pressure me into doing everything Dr. Fauci wanted me to do. And I said, like, man, we already had this talk. We've been through this already. Let's just stop this now. And he's like, no, just forget about it. Let's just not worry about it. But I didn't feel job security. I knew something would be coming down. And 2-3 weeks later, I got the email from upper management saying, you're all going to have to do it. And if you don't, you're going to face restrictions. My problem was, fine, I can muscle through this thing with my buddy. We're probably going to end up in a conflict, but I'm going to have my own crew soon, and I'm going to have to enforce these restrictions on them. I'm going to have to speak on my employer's behalf to my crew. And that's where I went. I'm not doing this.
Right.
And I told them, you either got to lift it or I'm gone. And I knew they were short staffed, and I knew they had tons of work coming up. But a few days later, I got an email saying you're laid off, surprise shortage of work.
Wow.
And by that point, I had already started Jabless Jobs on Telegram, and it was already exploding. So I didn't even have time to comprehend what had just gone on with my childhood friend. I was just, I just dove right in.
So you already had started Jabless Jobs while you were still employed.
That's right. I wanted I wasn't feeling job security from my
Right.
employer, and
So it was
I wanted,
that moment. Like that
yeah.
was that you were like, I need to start something else.
Well, I just needed to find myself a job.
Got
That was my problem. I needed an avenue towards, I needed a job board somewhere that, I can trust the employer who's going to be posting a job on there. I couldn't find it anywhere on the internet.
Right.
So
And at the time too, you didn't hold a vision of I'm going to build a company for other people like me. In that moment, you were going, I need to find an exit strategy, a
yeah.
plan B, and you turned to Telegram
Hmm.
to start communicating with other possible like-minded people that
Hmm.
could employ you, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And I thought I'd run it for a week or two till I found a job, and then just drop it.
Yeah.
Because I was looking for an exit strategy from my employer, knowing the hammer was going to drop. And so I wasn't thinking long term. Like now, here I am. It is going on the end of April of 2023. 21 months later, 20 months later, and we're expanding. We're moving forward. We've got some investment. We have all these plans. We've got development on the go. We have branding and marketing plans, and we've just gone to something that I was way beyond my expectations in those last weeks of August of 2021.
So you get this email coming down from upper management saying basically sayonara, right? Like you're being laid off. We know that that's BS. It was because you don't want to comply. And on the side, this Telegram group, and was it called Jabless Jobs at that
Yeah,
time?
I
Yeah,
called it Jabless Jobs Vancouver.
Vancouver.
Yeah,
Okay. And so can you recall how many people were in that channel at that time you received that email?
at least 1,000, maybe more. I remember the first morning of Jabless Jobs a lot better. I was waking up early those days, going for a run before work,
Yeah.
and I was washing my face after my run, and that's when I was contemplating starting something, and that's when the name Jabless Jobs just sort of landed in my head. And I thought, wow, that's a good name. I made the name. I made the group on Telegram because in all honesty, I'd seen some other groups that had names that represented what I might be looking for, but they
Right.
would turn into these really noisy chat groups. And when you're looking for a bus, when you're looking for a job, you can take a bus to. You don't really care about what's going on in other parts of the world, or even some group of lizard people that are running everything. I just didn't care. I wasn't going down some rabbit hole.
Sure.
So I started the group, and then I shared it with a few friends I knew here in Vancouver, and they loved it. And then I started to see the same thing happening, people posting links to articles that are not relevant. So I had some advice from a friend about 2 days later to saying, turn it into a channel, and then I can vet everything that goes on there, and and create an email address. I just grabbed a Gmail and um, shared it publicly with the group and the channel, and then suddenly I had I was the avenue. People would reach out to me, and then I would publish. And that was when I realized, like, well, I might as well just tell them my name so they have someone to trust.
Mhm.
And I wonder if a friend of mine can make a logo, because it's a pretty good name. And this is in the days that I'm still working for my employer.
Okay.
That first morning that I turned it into a channel, a couple friends of mine shared it, and I remember going to work, and I had 18 subscribers. By noon, I had 400, and there was already 3 jobs on there that I'd made my friend an admin, so she was already bringing jobs on board. I was like, damn, we're moving. I thought we'd, you know, brainstorm over it for a few days before we figured out how jobs are going to show up. But there was already employers coming forward.
Wow, that's incredible.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
by noon, like how things have changed, hey? Like
Yeah.
that's pretty remarkable. So at the time, I guess, you know, like you said, it was already, your channel was already happening, busy, lots of people coming in it. And
Yeah.
so when you got laid off, I'm sure, did it hit home in a more like real way? Like now what? Because you've got this channel. At the time, you weren't monetizing it. It was just available for people. And now you don't
Hmm.
have a job.
Yeah.
So what in that moment, like, and it might not have been that exact day, but in and around that time, how did you decide to move from basically this channel that you were just doing out of foresight, being prepared, trying to look ahead? And you've also said before, you know, you didn't really have like this goal to create something,
That's right.
and all of a sudden there's kind of this purpose
Yeah.
that you had an opportunity. You didn't have to, but there was a purpose waiting there for you. So what
Yeah.
you
I mean, I like that you use that word purpose, like, because that's what, in hindsight, like behind every great company or any innovative company, there's a purpose, a problem being solved.
yeah.
And I wasn't planning it that way. I was trying to solve a problem for myself, and at the time, it was a problem that a lot of other people were experiencing.
Mm,
And I had a good name, and I started right away with a way for people to trust me. So with the name of the group, and putting my first name out there, and you know, getting into communications with people via email, telling them, "Hi, I'm George. I understand you're in a difficult situation," and that sort of thing. Just being personable and being a real human being. That just helped it solidify, and I felt a duty to stay committed to that. Um, but I didn't have time to think. Every waking moment in the first weeks after I was out of work was dealing with this, dealing with these emails, making job posts. I was just making them on Canva at the time. I would just make and I mean, in hindsight, now they look really bad. I would do them a lot different now, but it was working, and that's what I was doing. So, you know, the free version of the Canva app and the free email, and you know, then uploading onto Telegram, and you know, 3, 4, 10 jobs a day, and you know, a lot of it was also just telling people you're not alone. And in those communications with people is where we got a lot of our early taglines as well, and where I
mm,
developed a lot of my early understandings for what we're doing and why, and explanations as to who we are. So just in that constant communication, I started to, you know, organically grow into a brand.
it's amazing. And at the time, it was yourself, and is your friend still involved as an admin?
Uh, no, no, she got really busy with her fitness network,
Yeah.
her fitness training, and she had to face a lot of problems with the government because she was in an industry that was being
Sure.
mandated. So
Yeah.
she had to get creative and figure out how to operate without you know, complying and not getting shut down. So she had to remove herself from what we were doing, and that was fair. She helped me get a good start.
Mhm.
But at that point, a friend of mine from Winnipeg, my buddy Steve, who I used to live with, he was helping me out with like setting up a link tree and making an Instagram account, and just kind of moving forward with stuff just to have more presence and show people we're more real. And then, and because I had no idea what I was doing with a lot of that tech stuff. I never made a Linktree account. I was, you know, at the time, I was hard for me to just navigate any old website.
Sure.
I'm a Gen Xer, and so then around the first week of first week of September 2021, I was sitting with a friend in Kitsilano in here in Vancouver, and she said to me, you know, because I was just expressing how exhausted I am, like I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know how I'm gonna do this. Like I can't let this go now. It's too important to so many people.
Sure.
I'm enjoying it, but it's exhausting. And I was just sort of ranting a little bit to her. And she's a very successful woman, and I've become a dear friend. And she said to me, "You got a really good name, George. Don't apologize. Get that name registered, incorporate. You gotta monetize or you'll burn out." And she was right, 100%. I
Mhm.
was struggling with that at the time because I didn't know that how ethically correct it would be to try and monetize a freedom movement arm of the freedom movement.
Right.
I didn't know it, and nor did I know how I was going to monetize. I can't charge a job seeker money to apply for a job. I just can't do that. And so I didn't know how I was going to do this. So it all just had to unfold organically over the course of the following weeks. I reserved the name on the federal registries, and um, then I don't know how I
It's so
made it into.
ironic, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure they love to give you that approval. I have to like
Well,
I think that I'm like, that is so wild.
yeah, it's funny because as soon as I was attached to that name and I was using my first name, connecting to it and being willing to talk with it, I mean, I'd already had a conversation over the phone with someone from Rebel Media.
Mhm.
I was just, I'm gonna be a part of this now, and depending on how it goes, it's gonna be a part of my life. I don't know, even if this ends in 2 3 months, it's going to be a period of my life where I'm going to be connected to this name, Jabless Jobs.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, well, there's no restrictions in that regard. Just cut loose with it, and then it became quite liberating. There was no need to hide, just let them know what I'm doing, and if
Mhm.
they have a problem with it, well, I'll deal with it, you know.
Yeah. So
And so
you got the registry? Like you got it
yeah,
registered?
yeah. What I
Wow.
did is I reserved it through the Corporations Canada.
Mhm.
And then I that was mid September, and that gave me 90 days to hold on to the name.
Okay.
And I didn't have the money to incorporate. I didn't know how. I didn't have food in my fridge.
Wow.
I didn't know how I was going to pull it off. This other friend of mine, she knew what I was doing. I was getting close to the end of September, and I now she knew I had the name, and I had this attention and all this stuff happening. um, and I wanted some business advice, so I asked her for meeting for a coffee, and she took me out to lunch. And she's, I was really lucky to have some very smart people around me at the time who have been through a lot of businesses and startups, and Vancouver's great for that.
Yes.
And she before we even started our conversation, she pulled out $300 cash out of her wallet and said, "Fill up your fridge." And
Mhm.
that just relieved miles of stress. I just was, oh, wow,
Yeah.
and now, I just relaxed right into the conversation and laid out everything that I had concerns about and questions, and I just knew I was going to be okay, because that just never happens. People just don't do that to me.
Yeah.
Something real was happening, and so then a friend of mine from church a couple weeks later found out what I was doing. I hadn't met him before, but he came forward and told me that he really loves what I'm doing, and he wanted to have coffee with me, and he had some ideas, and we started talking, and then he says, "Well, what do you need?" And I'm like, "What's that mean?
Yeah.
Can you be more specific?"
Yeah.
I could use another coffee at the time, like, "Well, where are we going with this?" And he's like, "You want to get this into a business. What do you need? Tell me." And I was just like, "Man, maybe a few grand, I guess. I got to incorporate. I got to get some equipment. I probably could use a whiteboard, maybe a printer, and you know."
Yeah.
And he just said, "Okay." Took my email address. He transferred me a grand. He said, "Go incorporate, become like buy a printer, open up a corporate account,
Mm.
and when you've done that, let me know, and I'll send you two more."
Wow.
And then
Wow.
and that's how I got the company started in mid-October on 3 grand.
Wow. I
And
mean, it's such a powerful testimony that when you're willing to say yes to what you're being called to, everything falls into place because it's actually bigger than yourself,
mhm,
and you know, for you, myself as well, like I'm a person of faith, you know, when God's called you to do something, those doors just open once you've said yes. And you don't need to figure out the how, right? Like that's his job. You just have to be willing. And those who are willing and available to just use me, like look what happens, you know,
Yeah.
like literally $300 shows up at your table, $1,000 shows up in your account to incorporating, follow another 2,000, and you're a CEO of a company today because you were willing. You just said yes to something that you did not know, was very uncertain, can receive a lot of flack. Like this is not a glorious job that you took on, or like role, I should say. You know, anybody in the freedom movement who has spoken up in this time, it's been the opposite of easy. You know, it has been very divisive, as we all know, but it's been hard. And so I commend you greatly for saying yes to the call and being willing. And literally, like you're the CEO today of a
Yeah.
company because of
Yeah.
that. Like it's remarkable.
You know, we don't always see, I mean, maybe I'm getting a little philosophical here, but we don't always see where truth will lead us.
Mm.
If in that first step, when I said no to my friend, I knew what I was doing was right, but I didn't know where it would lead me, and I didn't have the chance to think ahead.
Yeah.
Um, but as long as you're stepping in what you believe is right, and that as long as you're stepping on that path in that direction, then it will lead you somewhere. And because you can't see all everything that's right at the same time. You can't see all the truth at once. I was willing to be convinced otherwise too. You know,
Mm.
what if I'm making a horrible mistake? That came through my mind as well. And a lot of people don't realize that I was not down some rabbit hole.
Right.
6-8 months earlier, in Christmas 2020, January 2021, when it was coming through the news that the vaccines were coming out and COVID's going to end, I was on side with that. I
Mm.
was like, good, finally, this is lasting a while. I can't wait to get my shot and this all to end. But through my due diligence and some research and conversing with people that I trust, I started to have doubts. And by June, July, I had already concluded that I'm going to wait. And I believed that I was not going to be a burden to the medical system. And I knew that I had a low risk of dying or even having severe symptoms from COVID. I
Right.
believed that COVID was real. And the talk at the time was, you have to get it to protect grandma. I had no contact with elderly. I lived alone. I had no contact with kids. So I was a very low risk to society, and I had considered all that. I was considering all that. And my conclusion in early July was that I will wait 2 full winters and see what happens in Canada with all this. I'm going to wait till July 1st of 2023, and that's when I will decide if I'm going to take this COVID vaccine or not. And boy,
Wow.
I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I waited.
Well, number one, I'm very glad you waited as well. And I don't know if you saw, but just last week, which I should probably contextualize that. So in April
Mhm.
of 2023, the FDA has just announced that the COVID vaccine by, it doesn't matter, Pfizer, Johnson and Johnson, that it's no longer authorized to be given out. So anybody who was mandating it as an employer, effective basically immediately, that's going to be reversed. And the real key important part, like I've had this conversation with a couple of people and they're like, oh, it's about time. I'm like, no, you're missing the point. They're not, the FDA is not saying you no longer are required to have the shot. They're saying it's no longer approved to administer, meaning there are enough problems with the shot And it's become that public that they are pulling it. So you don't actually have a choice anymore if you want to get it or you don't want to get it. That choice has actually been eliminated and it's removed. They cannot administer it, which that has not gone in the news. Where is that globally that this has happened? And that speaks volumes to what this actually was versus what they were telling us that it was. And so hearing you just even like critically thinking everything you just shared, and now sitting where you are today with the FDA pulling it, it is no longer approved and authorized to administer. It's like, I'm grateful for you, that
was
that
a close one. Yeah. What the heck just happened? I'm still hearing from job seekers. They'll find some job on Indeed and they'll say nothing about the vax, and they'll make it to the second or third interview, and then they'll drop the question, "Can you prove your COVID vaccine?"
Wow.
It's still happening here in Canada. I got my eye on Canada, and it's still going on. It's really unfortunate. Even though the mandates have been lifted provincially, there's still a lot of employers enforcing. And something I've concluded on, I believe this from high school, but the last 3 years have been a wonderful experiment that helps me conclude this, that social acceptance matters more to many people than science or logic.
Yeah.
And I also, I don't want to throw an employer under the bus who's enforcing the vax still. I have some sympathy because I'm a business owner now. Who's got time to do all this research and follow the science? You just don't. If you're running a business, you just don't. So I sympathize, and it's not about winning or losing. It's about recognizing that people made mistakes, so we don't do it again. But now we're changed forever, and job seekers will always want an employer that they can trust, because we don't know what's going to happen again. The future is always uncertain. And there's a lot of employers who came forward and they want a trusted brand to be able to grow their team through and have a like-minded team.
Yeah.
And so we're as strong as we've ever been. We're just better at what we used to do. And it's like, you guys won't be important when they lift the mandates, is what someone told me. And I thought, well, no, you know what? We will be, because job seekers are changed forever.
Totally.
And I believe that. But what I didn't expect was so many more employers to come forward, because the social pressure was relieved a little bit. And so the culture around having your right to choose for yourself is embedded in us now, and we're a brand that represents that, that ability to, that offer to choose for yourself.
And so now, are you finding, like, through Jabless Jobs, that is it starting to grow into its own type of community as well, as opposed to just a job seeker?
Yeah, I mean, we're more than we're more than just an Indeed or something, or a Craigslist, right? We're compassionate with each other, and we're sharing our victories with each other. I know for so many people, Jabless Jobs was a beacon of hope, and they'll never forget that. Like we've facilitated the employment of a little more than 1,000 people.
Wow.
But there's a countless amount of tens of thousands that just felt hope and emboldened to know that they're not alone. But from learning about Jabless Jobs, like I received so many emails, it's remarkable, and they still come in, and it's very motivating. It's largely why me and Melissa have been able to keep going as we have. We were not just selling T-shirts. We never even sold T-shirts. It's been remarkable. It's just been we gotta keep this hope alive.
Yeah. And I mean, as much as hope you are providing, I also see it that you're saving lives. Honestly, like when you think of how many people maybe didn't have groceries in their fridge that was similar to you, and it's not even just about the hope of trying to find something, but it's mentally keeping yourself sane and not compromising something that you really don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And had they have taken it, could one of those people have either had serious side effects, health effects? Could they have ended up dying from it? We don't know. Thankfully, we won't
Yeah.
know. But there's these people. For me, I hear your story, and it goes beyond hope. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's really saved a lot of people, and now you're building out like this community where when people realize there's other people out there like them, and you telling your story and creating something like this, it is courage. It's inspiration to be courageous for somebody else. You know, that if you
Mm-hmm.
could hold your ground and you can stand strong, and that there is another option, there's another way, there's an alternative where you can make money. Another thing is all about making money in this time.
Mm-hmm.
We're really learning that relying on an employer or the system, if 2020 didn't teach us anything, is you can stay in your 9 to 5 and work for somebody else, but you should absolutely be thinking about an additional revenue stream
Yeah.
that if that one disappears for whatever reason, that you are not relying on that. And that's been a cool shift for you, has it not? Because now you're in this role
Yeah.
of creating your own income as opposed to relying on that hand that fed you.
Yeah. And I mean, the circle's complete when you have the full incentive, right?
Hmm.
And at first I thought I'd get some pushback, but I didn't, from people in the freedom movement. They loved what I was doing. They were confused. Why did you incorporate? And how could I do anything else?
Mhm.
Saw a lot of groups that became nonprofits, but they couldn't drum up investments, and everyone's volunteering. There's no leadership. Some groups survived and are still going and still active, but many did not. You have to have leadership. You have to have a complete circle of incentives,
Yeah.
and otherwise you will not move forward. Like in some ways, we can be called corporate activists. I believe in capitalism, conscious capitalism, and we're using capitalism to fight against a potential communist takeover. If that's the theory, then that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Just allowing people to choose for themselves, and none of it was illegal. It was about social pressure on these employers.
Yeah.
Like almost all the employers who posted jobs with us that weren't asking were
Mm.
not mandated.
Wow.
They just wanted to find staff that was like-minded,
Yeah.
and
Well,
we're willing
seems
to
so
take us.
important.
Yeah, growing a like-minded team matters a lot, and it's still largely this way. But like with the employment shuffle that happened, you got a lot of people who are very strong-willed, do their own research, and believe in their own choices, who are suddenly out of a job. That's what leaders are made of.
Mhm.
So we have some great testimonies from employers saying, like, I would have never gotten such quality staff if it wasn't for your job board and this government making these mandates. Because they were able to grow their team with real high quality candidates that would have been perfectly happy at their job for the rest of their careers and hadn't looked for a job in decades. And then they find someone who's just not going to throw them under the bus, and they'll put their heart and souls into working for that person.
Yeah.
So
And there's a loyalty bond too
that's
that
right.
forms, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been fascinating. A lot of unforeseen byproducts to what, I decided in early September 2021. I can't measure it. It's been fascinating.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So share with me a little bit, what is the revenue model? I need a job. I didn't take the jab. I need a job, and I come to your site or I come to you.
Yeah.
What's the process?
Well, you don't need, you don't, it's free to apply. If you're a job seeker and you want to apply, all you need is a resume, and you upload your resume into the application process.
Okay.
In a few months, that's going to change because we're just in the middle of development with building a new job board, and we're going to be working a lot more like the way Indeed works, but
Mhm.
we're putting a lot more branding and culture into the new website. And and but right now, if you're applying, all you don't even need to make an account on the website. Go to jablessjobs.org and browse jobs on the job board, and have a PDF or a Word doc resume ready to go, and upload it and apply when you find something you like. And for a employer, right now we have a one size fits all process where it's $75 for a post, and your post can be live for up to 6 months, which equals to about $12.50 a month. So it's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Um, and we put together this website for pennies in November, December of 2021, and we did pretty good. But it has a lot of limitations.
Mhm.
For something we put together for under $1,000, we did really well. But to move forward and really offer great services, we knew we had to build a new website, and it's taken some time, but we're on our way to that now. So this website currently still has some limitations, and that's why we had no choice but to offer sort of a one size fits all option for employers, where we have to just kind of choose one price, and you can make it so you can come back to your job post and change the job title or change the description and edit things as you like. So that way, someone who's got a job post for 1 month and may have a high turnover rate can come back and re-edit that one and change something and play around with their job post. And
Right.
also for a seasonal employers who might want something live for the whole season, that's why we decided on this up to 6 months, and $75 is pretty free. And we have some upsell options too. You can have your job featured for $100 or $200, depending on what timeline you want.
Okay.
And we do a resume builder. A lot of people who are looking for jobs um, hadn't made a resume in a long time, over a decade.
Sure. Yeah. I
So
believe
we were hearing from them a lot in October, November 2021. So I sat back with my buddy Steve in Winnipeg, and we had quite a few meetings, and we just articulated a vision, and we put together a resume building service who has a real resume specialist attached to the other end of that. And this is, again, people we met that just reached out to us saying, let me know if I can help in any way.
it.
So we just made that $50. You get a professional resume made by a professional resume specialist within 2 business days. And I just said to the person, how about we split it 50-50? You get $25, I'll get $25 for the company. And that was our deal. So I just said to her, make a template so you don't have to spend 5 hours on everything.
Yeah.
And we have an option where people can upload their old resumes, their pre-existing resumes, and we have a lot of fields on there that evolved for a while over the course of time as questions came up and information was missing. And we just encourage people to fill out the fields as detailed as possible, and just take your time with it, fill it out as much as possible, upload an old resume if you got it, pay your $50, you'll have a professional ATS friendly resume within 2 business days.
Wow.
Um,
Love that.
yeah. So, and again, it's really important to us to keep our team small, keep our overhead low, because a lot of these people, a lot of us Canadians, are living paycheck to paycheck,
Mhm.
and we had a lot of pressure on us suddenly thrown at us, and so it matters to me to keep our prices low and affordable, even though we're moving towards some very high quality product. But we had enough people believe in us to support us for it. So we're digging in for the long haul, and part of our long-term plan is to keep things affordable by keeping our team small, keeping our overhead low, and making sure that we're not gouging someone who's suffering.
I love that. I love that. What a powerful vision, that you like how you have orchestrated the structure of your company, and
Hmm.
of that. So, um, Well, I will say I am looking for a new VA. So if you come across somebody great, I'm like, maybe I should go on there and post something.
Yeah, you should.
So I might head on over after our interview and do just that.
Yeah.
So, and also keep it in mind because you see more than I do, you know. So, okay, you've talked a little bit about, how you're structured right now. What would you say is in this growth period that you're moving towards? What is your biggest need for Jabless Jobs right now?
My biggest need is for me and my team to remind ourselves about personal development.
Okay.
When we can make ourselves better,
Mhm.
the byproduct of that is a better company.
Definitely.
When we can solve problems better and communicate better, then we're going to continue to be a better company.
Mhm.
So that's where I'm at now. Like we had to shape up real quick, and we got to a certain point of personal development. I was talking like this in October of 2021. Just when I had a team of three there for a bit before Steve had to move on. Melissa was already a part of us by October, and I said to them, take time to be a better version. Take time to become better because we need to be better than we are before. You're both great, and I like to think I'm doing all right. But whatever good we have, we need to be better at it because there's a lot of pressure on us, and our faults are going to come to the surface in front of each other real soon. So that was where we were at, and I watched Melissa quit smoking, quit drinking, watch her diet. I've watched her lose over 50 pounds. She's much more articulate. I've gotten better at writing. I've gotten better at communicating. I like to think so, at least. I don't want to toot my own horn. But I like to think that I got better at some things, but there's still a lot of work to be done. I spend a lot of more time reading books that will inspire me now. Reading stories of entrepreneurs who went through struggles, trying to learn from their mistakes so I don't do it over again. And that's been a huge help. I mean, to know that these experiences, to some degree, even before COVID,
Mhm.
people were growing companies and branding and trying to solve problems. And there's a lot of information that exists on this process for me to just draw from and find parallels that can be placed into what we're doing, and there's a lot out there. There's lots out there.
Definitely.
um freedom lover, anti-vaxxer or not, there's still people. So
Yep.
people respond to things the same way that they would if they were buying Nike shoes or a sweater from the Hudson's Bay Company.
Mhm.
Their first impression, their trust in the company, their belief in their values, their psychographic, their willingness to support, and their ability to absorb a story and relate to the story of the brand is all. It all has to be there, just like any other business.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you brought up a couple of really good points. Um, I say often that successful people leave clues, and many people who have experienced great success know that they didn't get there on their own. Behind every successful person is not just a current team, but there are many people along the milestones along the way that have contributed to where they are currently at. And you've even shared it in your own story thus far, where you're at in the journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
You will never forget the woman who gave you that $300 for food. You will never
No,
forget
I never
the
will.
pastor that gave you that $1,000 to incorporate your company. And so oftentimes successful people, not just that they leave clues, but they're willing to share their stories, as to how they did it, and not just seeing the end result that looks easy, It's that whole, I love I'm sure you've seen this on Instagram many a times, of using an iceberg analogy where you see, you know, like the tip of the iceberg out of the water, but you don't see the depth of all the struggles, all the work, the late night, the tears, everything that comes with building anything that's worth celebrating does not come easy. And so, yes, there's a lot out there to be able to absorb and read and learn from. And that personal development piece, investing in yourself is the greatest investment you'll ever make. Over any real estate investment, building a company, it starts with you. And I think it's wise that you recognize that in order to grow and build the company, but also to be able to serve the people you're serving that come into Jabless Jobs, but then growing your team, and the better you are as a human, and not just to be kind, like in all things, the healthier you are, the stronger your mind is, you know, learning new strategies, coming up with new concepts, and learning all of this through personal development overall is just going to help grow in all of the different areas. And so I love that you at this stage are bringing that into your company, because that's such an important component, big time.
Yeah, you know, a lot of us Canadians are so just damn passive.
Yes.
And like when I sit back and I look at my role here as CEO, I have to make decisions for tens of thousands of people who I might never meet. And I have to make decisions that may or may not, you know, as you alluded to earlier, save their lives or offer them an opportunity for financial security, or give them an avenue towards hope. And if I'm going to dig in for the long haul to make these opportunities available to people that still haven't heard of us, then I have to make the right decisions on their behalf. I'm thinking about someone who will hear about us in 1 year, 2 years from now, who I've never met and might never meet. That person is another Canadian that is needing me to make the right choice today.
Yes.
And that's where I think of the big picture here. And if I'm going to make the right choice today, then I better be the best version I can be, right? Like it's a duty. I couldn't do that if I just allowed myself to drift off into laziness and slothfulness and, you know, become some depressed pothead. I would be failing people who depend on me.
Yeah. So important. And I commend you for realizing that, acknowledging it, and actually doing the work. Because that's the other side. You can be like, yeah, I should be doing this. I need to be doing this, but then to put it into actual action is a whole different thing. So kudos to you to be putting that into actual action.
Believe me though, like, can I add to that? Like,
yes, please.
I'm not going to pretend like I've been perfect. You know, all the difficulties, I wanted to quit. You know, I've listened to podcasts with David Goggins in there a lot, and he's got this line: "I don't quit when I'm tired. I quit when I'm done." And that rang into my head a lot in the first year or so of Jabless Jobs. I just don't want to be at my laptop responding to emails all day long, but I'm not done. That's my duty now. And it's not that I loved sitting at my laptop. I did not like doing that. But I had to do it because it was people were depending on it. So it's not about you know, and then every day ends and I feel many days I would feel like I just didn't do enough. So it's not like I'm feeling this great euphoric sense of accomplishment all the time. There was many times in the last 20 months where I was feeling like a complete failure. But then a week or two or three would go by and I would look back and say, well, you know, since that tough weekend, we actually got these two major things done and we broke another sales record. Okay, I guess we're doing all right. Like, and then it starts to add up over time that there's this success that you just don't see in the daily minutes and grind of just trying to keep it going.
Yeah. Well, and it's the compound effect, right? When you are faithful and you just continue to show up and you do the work and you put in the time, it's like I always use fitness as an analogy because everybody can relate to it and we understand that the best. When you go to the gym every single day and you are being mindful of the nutrition that you're putting into your body and what you're eating, you don't see the changes from day to day. But when you look back in 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, and you see how much your body has transformed,
Yep.
you're like, oh my goodness, like it paid off. That discipline, the dedication, the time, the effort, the frustrations. And if you've got a goal around fitness, as we all know, it's not perfect. There's some days where like you might show up at the gym and you might be scrolling on your phone the whole time, but like you're still showing up and you're moving forward. And that's the point, and so it is, entrepreneurship is exactly the same way where, you just have to keep going, and your consistency over time, no matter, some days are worse than others. And it's one of the hardest jobs in the world, but it is one of the most fulfilling as well, and that's why a lot of people who are in entrepreneurship will tell you it's like they keep going. And you alluded to that earlier, but by using a word called duty, like that comes from a very deep, I don't even know if it's a passion, because passion and duty are very different, yet they can cross over. But you have this drive through having a duty to showing up and serving and showing up and getting this done for the people that, like you had mentioned earlier, that they're relying on you. They need you. Jabless Jobs can't go anywhere.
Yeah, I can't imagine the world without it now. I just cannot see an avenue of hope for employers and employees in Canada without this platform.
Yeah.
And it's that maintaining that consistency of discipline.
Yeah.
Showing up, and then me and Melissa have gotten into a good routine lately where we meet up every morning at 5 a.m. and we read together, and then we either resort to our own fiction novel, and or write a page in our journals, and just that consistency, that showing up and knowing that we're gonna meet on this couch at 5 a.m. every morning, and then we're cut loose, and by 8 a.m. we meet up, and that's when we have our first business meeting of the day.
I love that.
And so
routine.
Yeah, that's our routine. So then by 8 a.m. we've already been awake for 3 hours. We've been reading and writing almost the whole time, and we've been mostly alone and in quiet, but we do it together. And then that's time when I start to have like visions of stuff, and I can start to think, well, I read this great idea in this book. We can apply it to this down the road, but I won't mention it today because it'll distract us from what we need done by noon. And then I make a note of it, and maybe it ends up on the whiteboard or in some scrap paper I got to dig through my drawer for a week later. And that's sort of a routine. Just showing up and keeping at it is so important. And you mentioned exercise. There's another thing I really love, and there's two things that I really love, and I want to bring up here. And I'll start it with a really bold statement that just blindsides people when I say it, and then I'll explain. In 2012, January 2012, I quit smoking by training myself to swear less.
By training yourself to swear less. Wow, this is interesting. Okay, tell me.
Well, I had this innate theory that my urge and impulse to smoke a cigarette was coming from the same unchecked spot in my brain that was, choosing which words or not choosing which words came out of my mouth. I was acting impulsively, reacting impulsively. I was just on autopilot. So I would just answer to my urges and take the shortcut with my language. And so I was realizing that I was clear to me that I was not the person I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And there's no chance when you're working in northern Alberta in oil patch There's no chance to get away from people who swear a lot. There's no chance to go and take a week off to go and exercise and read some book you've been dreaming on. You're working 12 hours a day in the bush with a bunch of dudes who are dropping F-bombs all the time and smoking all around me.
I was going to say, and a lot of them smoke too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was right in there with them. I didn't want to try some patch, and I didn't want to try some gum. It all just didn't seem like the right thing for me. And I also wasn't very social in the oil patch. I was very happy just, after dinner, going to my room and reading a little bit and going to sleep. I started taking some time to think that I'm not disciplined enough to quit smoking. I just do not have the discipline to refrain from that. And I needed to exercise my discipline somehow. And I needed to catch myself in that impulsive moment. And I don't know how it all played out in my thought process, but at some point I realized that if I can just exercise my language, then I might get better at, preventing myself from having 25 cigarettes a day. Instead, I can have 12 or 20. If I can just lay off of a few, and just by being able to catch myself and repel those impulses.
Yeah.
And over time, I realized like that this is working. This is working. It took 2 solid tries, but then I eventually quit smoking, and it was the last Sunday of January 2012. And I was in the middle of the bush, just south of a town called Anzac, Alberta. I remember it very well. Yeah, I had my last cigarette around noon, and around noon on that Sunday. And later in life, I applied that same discipline to food discipline. I was raised Greek. I'm a Greek guy. I love food. I love cooking. I love food as much as anyone. I can finish almost anything you put in front of me. I can eat it faster than almost anyone I know.
I love it.
And for me to apply food discipline into my life is an even greater challenge than trying to quit smoking. And I have succeeded at that, where me, and now me and Melissa will go sometimes up to 2 months without eating any carbs, any sugars. And then we're having no choice but to face our own personal impulses and that urge, So there's a big part of our personal development that revolves around food and language discipline, and that's based on my own experience.
I love it.
And so that makes us stronger, and it also unveils our weaknesses too, so we can then work on them outside of work, that sort of thing. So I really wanted to share that with you, that you can quit smoking by just changing the words you use.
So crazy. Have you looked into any of the science around that?
I spoke with a woman a few months ago who has a science degree, and she's got a mom with dementia. And she was just a customer of ours who was posting, and we just got into this great long talk about the science of the mind and stuff. And I shared with her that, and then that was when I first heard the word amygdala. She said that I nailed it because I tapped into my amygdala, and I'm paraphrasing her, but she spoke a little bit about that, and that's sort of where that impulsive reaction is. To my understanding, but that's as far as I can, paraphrase her and her science talk.
I love that. I've never heard that before, ever. So I love that you shared that. I just learned something new, and something I think very cool, just altering language, which in some ways, if you think about it, your thoughts become your habits, right? Like your thoughts become your actions, and your actions become your habits. So when you change your thoughts, you change your habits, you change your actions. But to have that correlation around language to actually stop something like smoking, I don't know if I would have ever thought that was even possible, and coming together. So
it is. It just takes time, and you don't see the results daily, right? It takes months and weeks before you can start to see a result.
Yeah.
That came up with a friend of mine, Dave. I was staying at his place in Edmonton, and I'm an Orthodox Christian, and he's very Protestant.
Okay.
And we would talk about this stuff, right? Fabulous conversations, you can imagine. he said to me a question, and he didn't expect a direct answer from me. He just wanted to hear me entertain the answer a little bit. And he said, if why is swearing a sin if anyone in the room who hears you swear is not offended by it? If nobody isn't in the room is insulted, then it's not a sin. Isn't that right? And I thought about that for a while. It's a really good point he's making. But where's the sin? Where's the disservice?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I know that I use swear words in place of words that could better articulate what I'm trying to express.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, even if no one is offended in the room, then my use of swear is an insult to my being, to myself, because I'm not pausing to think about which words could better express the point I'm trying to make.
Sure.
And so then my language does not evolve. My ability to articulate what I'm feeling does not get better. And that's where I was thinking hard on that for a while, because we thought a lot about that over the next few days. And then I got into a truck and I drove north, and there I was working oil patch thinking, how am I going to quit smoking?
Yeah, that is nuts. So one, my mother's going to thank you. my mom hates swearing. Like, my mom hates swearing. So not only mom, he's also from Winnipeg. We didn't talk about that. I think you mentioned briefly, but we were talking about Alberta, not Manitoba. But not only are you from Winnipeg, but you're talking about everything around swearing. So my mom is going to be so happy to listen to this. But, and even not to get biblical, but it is why in the Bible, there's a verse that says that a man who can control his tongue can literally accomplish anything, because controlling your tongue is one of the hardest disciplines to master. And so if you can do that, you literally can do anything. And there's much more around that, but loosely, that's like the guiding compass. And so it's incredible that you use that to quit smoking.
And I hadn't read that in the Bible till just last month when we were going through Lent. We were reading in Proverbs a lot of stuff of the controlling your tongue, and I'm sorry, but I hadn't read Proverbs until just last month. And there was some very,
you just got enlightened. You got all kinds of good things happening.
And it really ran parallel to what we were talking about with food discipline and language discipline, and just, and even just a lot of the stuff David Goggins says, you just don't stop. You just keep going, and you'll find it. You have that energy in you. If you just keep trying to find it, you'll find it, and your body's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so George, I have to ask you.
Yeah.
Fast forward 5 years from now, you are the CEO still of Jabless Jobs. What does that vision look like? Where are you wanting to grow this 5 years from now? Which I'm going to have you back on the podcast. So you're telling me this now, and you're going to be back. I'm sure you'll be back in less than 5 years, but for sure in 5 years, we got to have this conversation again.
Well, my long-term plan is to win over the 40% of the people in the middle who are on the fence, politically or with these medical mandates. And I have a plan for that. So 5 years from now, I'm not going to be marketing to 15% of the company, of the country. I'll be marketing to about 65 or 70% of the country. And they would have heard of us. So that's where I plan to be at in 5 years. That's professionally. I would like to have a CEO take over if I can find someone at some point in the future, because I know that I can only take things so far, though I'm constantly learning, and my ego wants to tell me that I can just do anything. But there is a lot of people who have experience that I don't, that might do a better service to the company in the future. And my heart is more in literature and reading fiction and writing fiction. I I have a background in photography. I want to do photo essays like 1950s Life magazine. And I hope that me and Melissa are raising kids, and I can spend 4 or 5 hours a day writing fiction and working occasionally on photo essays, while I make sure that whatever CEO is looking after the company does not forget that we were born out of the freedom movement, and you owe it to these people, you know? And so maintaining the culture of the company is where I'd like to be in 5 years, but I think that there's probably someone who's a lot better suited than me to take it over. But, you know, ask me in 5 years, because
I can't wait to have you
it's my baby now.
Yes, I love it. Well, okay, I have one final question for you.
Sure.
We close out, and yes, I will definitely have you back in 5 years. When you think of being the CEO of your life, not necessarily of your company, but being the CEO of your life, taking ownership over your life, how has that brought you freedom?
It's opened me up to the advice of other people.
Mhm.
I own my life because I'm listening to those around me. It's a balancing act.
Mm.
I'm leading more now than I ever have, but I'm not leading as a dictator or an authoritarian. I'm making decisions on behalf of me and Melissa through her consultation, and our private life, and in our personal life, and in our work life. But I'm not doing that to please myself, but it's more to bring us towards the mutual goal that we share.
Mhm.
And if I don't have the insights of those around me, then I can't I can't see it from all angles like I need to. I've concluded recently that leadership is, whether it's in the personal life or in workplace, it's not about choosing on behalf of people because you say so. It's about listening a lot more, because there's a lot of people who, like, even we got a new IT guy recently, and I spend most of my time on the phone with him and in video chats just listening and asking him questions, because I don't know IT. And if I'm going to make decisions based on where we could go, on where we can move forward and what's more practical to do, I need him to fill me in. I need him to tell me this stuff.
Sure.
And, you know, Melissa's a woman, so she's got her finger on the pulse of social stuff a lot more than me, and who's who and what's what and stuff. So if I'm making decisions on where we should go and what we should do, or, you know, should we put off this project for now and do that, I look to her to provide for me her insights, so I can choose. So the CEO of my life is more controlling myself so I can listen.
Mm. I love it. I love it. George, I love your story. I love what you're doing. I'm so proud of you. I'm grateful for you and Melissa and your team, and so many people who have just stayed true to their gut feeling and held the line. And you're changing the nation of Canada. I know it started out on the West Coast, but I strongly believe it's going to carry out your vision, and it won't be long before you guys grow nationwide. So I will have you back in less than 5 years. I think
I'd
there's
love to be back.
continue to have these conversations. They're so needed and powerful. And, you know, your willingness, like I said earlier, it gives other people inspiration to be courageous. And knowing if you did it, that's available for them too. And there's community, there's people that they can meet and feel supported, you know, and that they're not alone. So thank you for spending some time with me today. I'm so grateful to have chatted with you.
It was wonderful talking with you. Thanks for having me. I look forward to talking with you again.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning into the Freedom CEO podcast. If you got value out of today's show, I would love for you to leave a review, as it will help my show reach other people as well. You know what to do. Download this episode, click the like and subscribe button. If you feel like spreading more love, hop over to Instagram and share today's show in your stories. Remember to tag Shane Vidiata and the Freedom CEO. My DMs are always open, so drop me a line. I'd love to connect. Until next time, keep owning your decisions to live a life of freedom. Live a life you love.